Welcome, YouTube, to the Geek Live. Today we'll be talking about just comparing and contrasting the Wizard subclass to the Sorcerer subclass, or class in general. There's been a lot of comparisons between those classes on what they can do, which one is better, and all that good jazz. So we're here to take a look and to see what we think about that. But before we do, don't forget hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and comment on down below on what you think on both classes. But before further ado, let's get to it. So when it comes to wizards and sorcerers, they're both full spellcasters, but their magic comes from two different places per se. Wizards, they're very knowledgeable, and their magic really comes from their intelligence and their spell book. Where sorcerers, they get their spellcasting, and their magic from something within. Maybe they were born from some draconic lineage or some sort of celestial lineage or what have you, but their magic comes from somewhere inside. So it's more innate, as I should say.
Street smarts versus book smarts.
Pretty much. And that actually works as wizards being book smarter have their spellcasting ability as intelligence, and sorcerers being more street smart as has their charisma as their spellcasting modifier.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and they both have their D6 hit die, no armor proficiency, very limited weapon proficiency. So they're all about the spellcasting. That's what they can pretty much do.
Yep.
So like there, there's a lot of debate on which one's better. I think they're both great in of themselves, but I would say let's start off with wizards and see what makes them tick.
Okay.
So wizards, I think, probably has the best spell versatility in the game because they have the largest spell list out of any of the full casters, and they operate throughout the spell's prepared mechanic as opposed to the spell's known. So basically, whatever you put in your spell book, you can prepare them based on the number of spell preparations that you know, and you refresh them on the long rest. So you can really put down a lot more. How should I say this? Situational spells, and
Mm-hmm.
if you know you might need that the next day, then you can just pop that back in your prepared list for that day and turn it back off afterwards. So I think that gives a whole lot of versatility in what you can do as a wizard.
Yeah, I think having basically the whole world set in front of you, and each day you can evaluate. Well, I'm gonna take these four from here, and these four from here, and these four from here. Makes like you said, the wizard's very versatile and helps with shape the scenarios that you're in and the situations, and make sure that you can go in fairly prepared.
Mhm. And basically, how wizards get their spells. So each level, you learn two spells, or should I say, you add two spells from the wizard's spell list into your spell book of a spell slot level that you know. And each day you can prepare up to your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier. And then you can also add in more spells on top of that if you happen to find some sort of spell book from like an enemy wizard or a library or whatnot. You just have to spend the gold and the time to actually write them into your spell book. Now, a key thing to remember though is the two free spells that you get on level up, you spend no resources to add them to your spell book, but any and all other spells that you add outside of that, you need to spend gold equal to 50 times the spell level, and you need to spend, what is it, an hour, I think, or 2 hours to add them into your spell book. Now, of course, there's a couple of ways around that depending on your wizard subclass. So so the PHP subclasses have their savants, which lowers that cost for their appropriate things, which it's an okay feature, but it's situational as an abjurer is probably going to pick up abjuration spells as their free level up spells anyways.
Right.
So it's kind of like a moot point. But nonetheless, if it happens, it's decent when it happens. But that's definitely something to keep in mind for wizards.
Yeah, I like this. Definitely plays into the idea that the wizards are based in their intelligence, right? Keeping a book, keeping a library of books, keeping these things written down so they can go back and reference them, just like you would a reference text for anything that you might be doing. You know, whether that's physics, chemistry, computer programming, whatever it. You know, you've got your reference book,
Yeah.
um, and I also like the fact that if your DM is crazy enough to come up with their own set of spells that are outside of the natural the base list, right? This gives you an opportunity to pilfer that spell off of one of the bad guy wizards, one of the enemies that you find, and be like, whoop, now I've learned this one too. Thanks a lot.
I think one of the negatives of the spellbook, though, that I haven't really seen too often in campaigns is you you know your cantrips, but you have to write your spell level spells in the spellbook. So if your spellbook is ever destroyed or you misplace your spellbook or whatever, there goes all of your spells. You can only cast cantrips until you get another spellbook, and once you do get another spellbook, you have to rewrite all of your spells back in, and that's going to take all of that gold and time costs and whatnot that we had just mentioned. So that's definitely something to keep in mind that you have to be careful about is keeping your spellbook safe. This is why there's that age-old method of once you're a high enough wizard, cast your clone simulacrum craziness and store an extra copy of your spellbook in some alternate dimension or something like that. So if anything happens to your spellbook, pop back up your backup spellbook and you're good to go. You just have to spend one or two more spell slots to make another backup and you're good to go.
Yep, you either need to have your backup service up and running or a disaster recovery plan in place, because if you lose that spell book, you're pretty SOL.
Yep. And it might not sound too bad if you're like level 1, level 2, but if you're a level 18 wizard with a whole bunch of good spells, that's going to really kill you, literally.
Yeah, definitely. You basically become useless if you don't have your spells at higher levels as a wizard, and you're squishy, and you become a pretty big liability in that regard. Um,
As, cantrips might be good at level 1 and 2, but they can only take you but so far at those higher levels.
yep, absolutely. That is one thing that I've not seen very much of is attacking a wizard through his spell book, which for you burgeoning DMs out there, that might be something that you could take advantage of, right? To spice up a campaign or something like that, to throw those curveballs at your wizard so that they think about making these backups and playing the wizard out a little bit fuller, and exercise some of these things that sometimes get overlooked.
Yeah. And if you're one of those types of GMs where you don't want to be like too big of a it's a family friendly word to say this, too much of a bad guy to your players, and to all of those who aren't family friendly, you know exactly what I wanted to say. But if you really want to be that bad guy GM, or if you don't want to be that bad guy GM, but you want to kind of like make your wizard player a little bit thoughtful in how he or she really takes care of that spell book, what you could do is have like a stray produce flame or something like that burn up like one or two pages of the spell book that maybe have their first level spells, so they gotta go on a side quest to reclaim somehow or remake that level 1 spell page in their spell book from like an archmage or something like that, and that kind of gets them thinking, okay, I got my spells back now, but I'm sure that's not always going to be the case. I need to think about this.
Yeah, that's a really that's I like that idea. I think that's a really another neat way to kind of play off that idea.
Yeah. So that way they could still function as a party member, but they feel a little bit of the pain.
Yep, exactly.
Now, as we take a look at sorcerers, which are more the innate spellcasters, they focus on they really deal with the spell's known mechanic. So they actually know spells, and they can only change out one spell once per level up. So, like bards, you really have to plan out your spells far in advance because you can't just switch them out on a long rest. So a lot of the situational spells, you have no business really taking it because they're not going to be good all the time. You need that space for more of the broader, more generally good spells, like if you're not in a super heavy magic campaign, you might want to let the wizard have detect magic instead.
Right.
Or if you're in a heavy water campaign, maybe you can take up water breathing, but if not, let the wizard have the water breathing spell. So that I think that's probably one of the biggest um, difference between
Differences.
wizards and sorcerers.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is you can't really you don't have a lot of opportunity to take those utility spells. You've got to think about taking the raw powerful spells, right? Which I think sort of ties into how the sorcerers get their magic, right? Through a draconic bloodline or a traumatic event or some sort of fiend or celestial sort of bond that they have, right? And so, thinking in those motifs, you kind of get this idea that they're a little bit plus, plus their spellcasting ability is charisma, right? So they're a little bit loud, a little bit boisterous, kind of got that edge and that spark to them. So
Yeah. And then, with the exception of the Aberrant Mind and the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer, which came out in Tasha's last year, pretty much all, and the Divine Soul Sorcerer, but pretty much all the other sorcerers can only have a maximum of 15 spells known at 17th level and beyond. So that really plays into you have to plan out how you want to build your sorcerer long in advance. But to compensate that, sorcerers get something called meta magic and the font of magic features. So what the font of magic feature does, it gives you sorcery points, which are equal to your level, sorcerer level, and they're kind of like key points from the monk in terms of it fuels some of your other class features. So it fuels your meta magic, and you can also convert sorcery points into spell slots and vice versa. Now, when we get to meta magic, they're pretty much like you use some amount of sorcery points to augment your spells in some way or another. For instance, what I think is probably one of the best meta magics, which is Twin Spell, it basically says use sorcery points equal to the spell level, and as long as it can only target one creature, it can now target a second creature as well. So that really helps to bypass concentration and stuff like that. Now, keeping in mind, you can twin spell a whole person that's cast with second level, but you can't twin spell a whole person that's cast with a third level spell slot or higher, because at that point it's technically targeted multiple people anyways.
mm,
So you can't twin spell higher than second level. So definitely keep in mind with spells that have effects when you upcast them.
yep, definitely.
Yep. So I think that's a trade-off. So when you look at what you want to play, what's important to the character that you want? Do you want versatility, or do you want to be super powerful at one or two things and
Yep.
really augment those spells to make them even better than they're normally intended to be?
Absolutely. Yep.
So I think that's the whole thing when it comes to wizards versus sorcerers. I think they're really fun classes, but as a player, you need to understand what makes each one good and why.
Yep.
Um, Whether it's versatility to be able to do a bunch of different things at a moment's notice, or to augment your limited spell pool.
Yep. Yeah. You gotta key in on those differences and understand them and figure out, what you feel like playing this time around whenever you play a sorcerer or a wizard, right? You want to, as you said, be versatile and have a full range of things to choose from, or do you want to be a little bit more specialized and only have, a, a handful or a couple of handful worth of really powerful spells that you can focus in on.
Or, and as another example, think of a wizard as an all-you-can-eat buffet. You have plenty of choices you can go to and keep going back up for different things. Whereas a sorcerer, think about what's the best seafood place that you know of in your city that really takes it to a cut above. That might be that $4 sign seafood restaurant on Yelp type of thing. That I feel like that's like a real world example of what wizards versus sorcerers are like.
Sure. Another good analogy there for sure.
Yeah. Now, in terms of what might be more powerful as a class, I might have to edge out for the wizard just because of the raw power that versatility brings to the game. So I think they have a slight edge in that whole regard.
Mhm.
But I think overall, whether you go wizard or sorcerer, as long as you pick out your spells based on what you're trying to create and whatnot, I think you're gonna have a super powerful build.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you pure that the versatility gives the wizard the edge in this race between the two classes. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a super powerful sorcerer or even have as much fun or more fun playing a sorcerer than a wizard, right? You gotta look at it and decide for yourself. But just from a range of what kind of spells that you have and um, are able to utilize and the utility of the wizard, I think it gets the edge.
Yeah, I agree. Um, well, with that, we'll bid the wizard and sorcerer debate to rest. Hopefully, everybody has fun no matter what choice you make. And until next time, keep y'all's lives geeky.
Bye, everyone.